Kings Island just isn't about the rides and the food. There's also live entertainment. Hello, everyone. Alongside Ryan Sir, I'm Don Helbig, and this is Tower Topics.
Tower Topics is a podcast by Kings Island fans for Kings Island fans, because that's who we are, and that's who we care about.
So, Ryan, Kings Island has opened 2 of its live shows, and we're not going to count the nighttime show as part of this, but the stage shows. So 2 of the 3 have opened, and we got Country Crossroads and Retrospect. We both have had a chance to see them. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so we actually experienced them for the first time together. What was this, last Monday? Yeah, on Memorial Day. So let's start with Country Crossroads, since we'll do them in the chronological order in which we saw them. But the cool part is like almost all of this cast is brand new.
Pretty much a new cast. Yeah, and I think they did a really good job casting the show. I had a chance to see it again earlier this week, and they have different, people that kind of swing in and out of shows. So I've been able to see a couple of different people in it as well. But a really good job casting the show, and a lot of the songs are very familiar. If you're a country music fan, from the different eras. So I've really enjoyed this show.
Yeah, I did too. Actually, I want to go as far as saying it's the best country show that they've had in the Fest House, and they've had country shows on and off for like a decade now, longer than a decade.
I'll agree with you on that. But the other thing I think that really makes it, as you said, the best country show in the Fest House, I think, is having the live band. I think that makes a big difference.
Why do you think that is? I agree with you, but I can't put my finger on why it matters.
Well, I think it just works too. It's country music. You've got the fiddle player and different, the other members of the band. I think it just really complements the songs that they use in this show. I've never been a big fan of these types of shows in the Fest House, when they've had different, in the early 80s and that they had some different kind of shows that worked in there. But I just think that it's very hard sometimes to hear the shows, because you've got everyone's enjoying a meal, they're talking to their friends, their family, they're walking back and forth in front of the stage, so I think that makes it a little bit difficult to enjoy the show to the extent that you would a show on the bandstand or a show in the Showplace Theater. Now, you and I talked about this, and I said that this show with the live band, it's perfectly suited for the Showplace Theater. That's where they used to have country shows with a band, pop shows with a band, back in the 80s and early 90s. So to me, I think if this show was in the Showplace, I think it really, really would be well received by guests. It already is, but I think it would really take it to the next level, outside of the Fest House.
Yeah, I mean, I'm grateful that we have shows in the Fest House, but we can't dance around the fact that the Fest House really is the worst venue, because if you're trying to watch a show, you're being bothered by all the people trying to eat. And if you're trying to eat, you're being bothered by the show that's going on. So it's kind of like tough
to have a conversation. But if you're having a conversation, it kind of interferes with those that are there to watch the show. But again, let's talk about the cast. Again, very talented performers. They do the songs that they've been assigned very, very well.
Yes. Yeah, I agree. It's a very good cast. I mean, I really don't know any of them, or I don't recognize it. I don't really know any of the performers that well, but I don't recognize any of them, which is kind of cool that it's like, passing the torch to the next generation. And this does kind of happen every couple of years. But one thing I do want to bring up is in this, you and I kind of came to a compromise with this when we were discussing it, but I feel like one of the aspects of the show that makes it really well done is that the lighting is so neat. If you guys are watching the YouTube video, you can see the stars in the background. Those actually change color. They have their, required patriotic section of every country show, and the stars actually make an American flag, which I think is a really, really cool effect. But if they were going to do it on the bandstand, this would have to be an evening show to have all the lighting and stuff like that.
Yeah, I wouldn't do a country show in the bandstand. I would put it in the Showplace.
That's what I meant, the Showplace, because the Showplace can have good light. I mean, you've seen that with Hot
Mhm.
Blooded and the haunt shows and so on. But if this were a show that's at 2, 3, and 4:30 or whatever, I don't think that would go as well. I think vocally and aesthetically it'll be just as good, but I think that having it in some sort of theater setting really helps this show.
Yeah. Now, historically, when they did country shows in Showplace, they were done in the evening hours.
Yeah,
So
that's what it would
the
have to
first show
be.
would probably be like 6:15, that kind of range. And but when you add the band and you have the talent that is in this show,
Hmm.
you mentioned best show you've seen in the Fest House. I'll go back and say that it's up there with country shows that I saw in the
Yeah.
1980s in the Showplace. I mean, just it flows very well. Like I said, the songs are recognizable. I like that they touch the different eras of country music. There's different songs in here that I heard from different country shows over the years at Kings Island. So,
Yes.
for me, that brings back, memories. We were sitting across an individual who was at a lot of shows in the 1980s. If you went into any theater, he probably was there watching them. And, he kept looking at me too, and there'd be different, and he would call us the name of the show, from the 1980s when that song was being sung. So, yeah, I mean, it's just really enjoyable. I highly recommend if you're going to Kings Island that you at least go into the Fest House and check out the show. I mean, you're there to ride the rides and those kind of things, but the entertainment's very good too.
I agree. And speaking of shows that have good lighting only at night, let's talk about Retrospect. So it's funny because I made a social media post. I don't remember what I think it was. We were talking about going into Memorial Day weekend and how they were opening two new shows and the nightly show. And somebody called me out saying, "But Retrospect is not a new show." But Retrospect is a new show.
I mean, name
we
only. It's returning
yeah.
in name only because the song with the lighting, the different effects, everything's different about the show from what I remember seeing before.
Yeah, and it's kind of weird because you would think that they would they'd be more inclined to come up with a new name and stuff so people won't see it and think like, oh, I've already seen that. I don't need to see that again. So it's kind of interesting that they do choose to do that. It's definitely cut from the same tree as last year's Retrospect, both of which are phenomenal shows. This one might actually be a little bit better. Spoiler
Yeah.
alert.
And it's kind of
Um,
like a Ride on the Beast, isn't it? Where there's two different versions of it. There's the daytime version that you see in the early evening, and then
yes.
when it is dark out, the nighttime show is a whole new level.
Now, I could be you and I saw, 2 shows, and I'm pretty sure I was watching the clock, and I think that the first one is a little longer than it's a little over 30 minutes, if I'm not mistaken, and then the one that's at 9:30, because you and I were discussing that we had to, like, cut out,
Yeah, to book it to the
three
front.
quarters
Yeah.
yeah, to get to the front for the fireworks, but the show was only, like, 15 minutes. Which I think is cool because you don't have to choose at that point, but you still get to see the show, and technically you can see both shows, and it's like a whole different thing. But they did some cool stuff with lighting, and the lights that are on the truss work for this are integrated into Under the Stars, which is just brilliant. You know,
Really, again, a nice way to kind of cap off your evening at Kings Island is to make your way to International Street. You catch this show at 9:30, and you make your way around. You kind of want to be in the front of International Street for the nighttime show. So Under the Stars. Uh, so it's really a great way to cap off your evening at Kings Island with this show, and then you see Under the Stars.
yeah, yeah. I like it. They've been using screens for a while. Actually, they've been using screens since like 2020, and I don't know if they own them or they lease them, but you could see from the photos here, like they've got the fog, they've got moving lights, they've got the video with like the trippy stuff on it and so on. Like it's almost like a concert. It's got a lot
Oh
of the
yeah,
same effects. I mean, and if you look at the vast majority of concerts, this definitely has more than that. But it's definitely a good bang for your buck when it comes to checking out a show. So again, the bandstand is not a good venue. Then the sun goes down and it's the best venue. So
yeah.
that's
During the
for
day,
like
it's tough for whether you're a performer, whether you're just there to as a guest watching the shows. If you're there 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, not the ideal time. But after 6 o'clock, the sun kind of goes down a little bit, start to get a little shade there. Great spot to watch a show.
Yeah. So, pro tip, no, and this is a blanket thing, no matter what year you're seeing this or what year you're listening to this, but see the latest show, because when it's dark, you can see all the lights and so on, and you have that party atmosphere and so on. So very, very cool. Now, we'd be remiss if we didn't mention, and this is going to have its own show, obviously, but Trailblazers Extreme is open from June 22nd to August 4th. Obviously, for the video listeners, this is a picture from a previous year's show that is not Trailblazers Extreme, but this is the picture on the Visit Kings Island website for Trailblazers Extreme, so I rolled with it. But have you checked out the set for it or anything? It looks like they're doing a lot
Yeah,
of
I was
stuff.
going to mention. Yeah, I was going to mention that every time that I've been to the park, you've seen more and more being done with the set. And my recent visit this week, I took a close up, look at it, and it looks amazing. Really well done. It kind of blends into that Camp Snoopy theme with the colors.
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to seeing it.
Yeah, I am too. I think it'll be a really, really good show. I'm definitely excited for it. It's kind of sad. It's a really short run. It feels longer being June 22nd to August 4th, but that's about 6 weeks or so. So
yeah, last year and the years before it started, early June, around this time, June 5th, 6th, 7th range, it would start, and then it would end mid-June, pretty much as daily operation was winding down. So a little bit shorter run, but it is a must-see show for basing on what we saw the past couple years with it, and seeing how that has evolved. Very entertaining, a lot of talent and skill involved in the show. So, it's another thing that when you go to Kings Island, make sure that you check it out.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, but enough about that. So random thing, Don, and you sent me this picture, and my question for you, and I'm going to put the picture of what it is up here on the screen, and I will describe it for the audio listeners. But so you've got a piece of Son of Beast. It's number 4, I think, 4 of 250.
It is.
So you sent me this picture a few days ago. So that's really cool. I mean, they were selling them for like $200 or something. I think at the time I just didn't have that kind of money.
It might have been like $299 or something like that at the time. Only 250 available, so there is value to it. But I sent it to you because I posted it on a couple of my social media channels, Facebook and X. A lot of engagement on X. The majority saying how much they did not like the ride.
Yeah.
And then more on Facebook saying that they did enjoy the ride. So 2 different audiences, I guess, with it. But it was it was a controversial ride. Just a lot of, it strikes a chord with people whenever you talk about Son of Beast. Even those that didn't get a chance to ride it, they're kind of upset they didn't get a chance to ride it. But it's just one of those rides that's going to go down in Kings Island history, for a lot of the wrong reasons. But it's nice to have that souvenir, piece of it. I had a lot of, I was one of the first riders on it on the Media Day event back in 2000. I remember, watching it being built. I would go up in the Eiffel Tower and check out the construction progress. You could go by the Kings Island Theater, and you go back a little bit behind. You go down a little path where the Chicken Shack is, and you could get some good photos and that from there as it was rising. It was an impressive looking structure. One of the most photographic rides the park has ever had. When you're on the midway taking a shot of it. But yeah, a lot of memories there as a rider on it, and also one of my first projects when I started working at Kings Island as the PR manager in 2007 was the reopening of the ride. So that was one of the first things that I did, was reopened it. And I was one of the few people that actually liked it better. I thought it was a more enjoyable experience without the loop. Now, the loop wasn't removed because of the incident that they had in 2006. It was removed so they could operate with the lighter trains, which was necessary because the heavier trains, was kind of, hard on the track, the structure. So I kind of enjoyed it a little bit better after the loop. But that was just me. Most people, they love the loop. But I thought if I wanted loops, I'd go ride the Vortex.
I mean, the loop was iconic, and to take it out would really kind of neutered the ride from my standpoint. Now, with that being said, when you would ride with the old Premier trains, which it opened with, you could tell that it was, a very heavy train barreling through this track, and like you felt it. And then they had the Gerstlauer trains that they got from the Myrtle Beach Cyclone, I think. And it felt like you were a Pinewood Derby car on the expressway. Like it was,
Yeah, I mean the other trains were tearing apart the track, and then with the layout, the design, it was hard on the trains when they went to the other ones, so they couldn't win.
yeah. I mean, it was one of those rides. I mean, this is going to be controversial, but it's like Vortex for me, where I miss having it, but I don't miss riding it. You know, like for me, I miss having the Vortex there with that Batwing right next to the midway across from the basketball game, and walking through their most photogenic spot, and maybe the whole theme park industry completely gone now. Now with Son
Yeah.
of Beast, you had that giant lift hill, and it was just majestic and stuff. But
Oh, it looked beautiful.
yeah, but the ride thing, like when they said they were removing it, no part of me was like, "Aw," you know. I was always like,
Yeah, for me, once it was shut down in 2009, if I just had a dollar for every time someone, whether it was media or guests, would ask me, what's going on with Son of Beast, I'd have bought a boat, been able to, just vacation out in Florida somewhere all the time. But a lot of people, very interested in the ride, were curious what was going to happen, with it. I can remember, when I got word that it was, going to be demolished to make way for a new attraction. I remember putting the release together and, figuring out the right time to announce that. The Bengals were having their training camp in Cincinnati for the first time
mhm.
that year in 2012, and I put out the release, the same day they were getting ready to open their training camp. So it would kind of mix in, would not be the lead story in the Cincinnati news that day, but would kind of mix in. So a little strategy there was involved with that. But it was kind of sad, after I sent out the release and okay, now it's over. And,
Yeah, but
then it was going out and just getting photos and video of, the ride being torn down. And that was interesting to watch that, process, because I had watched rides being built from the ground up.
yeah.
And that was an opportunity to see how they came down.
So is it like watching a ride being built but backward? Is that what you're telling me?
No, it's a totally different thing because there's no,
A little
it's
more
just,
haphazard that
just
way.
knocking it down, just knocking it down. And, I still have the video of it coming down the lift hill, when that finally came down as one of the final pieces of demolishing it. And there's a photo that I took uh, at that time. So we were doing photo and video. I shot the photo that I had. Um, Sarah was one of the people I worked closely with at Kings Island, the marketing department. I had her shooting the video, but the photo, it had, the debris and the wood flying everywhere. Uh, that got picked up international, that photo. So that was one of my favorite photos I took, just because it's a nice shot, but also, because Associated Press, felt it was good enough to distribute everywhere. So that was one of my, memorable moments, was taking that photo of the lift hill coming down.
Yeah, I remember that. I remember the video. It's out there. So look that up. But yeah, so if you see a video of the world's largest wooden structure meeting its end, that's credit Don Helbig. But yeah. So have you ever gotten an offer on this thing?
Yes, I have. There's been a number of different individuals who have expressed interest in having it, knowing that I had one of those track pieces because they were very coveted. I've had offers up to $3,000 for it, but been hanging on to it. I think my wife would love for me to get it out of the house, kind of a thing. But uh, it's kind of sentimental. So I mean, sometimes what, $3,000 would be nice. Sometimes you look at that too, and you think you can't put a price tag on memories.
Here, right? Okay. So let's let's move on to the listener question. So I'll take the first one. The question is from Jim Flugel, friend of the show. He said, need some information on this. The train house is named the William Haynes Memorial Roundhouse, and I cannot find anything on KI Central or other places. Any insight on who William Haynes was? Thanks for the insight. Don, if ever there was a question up your alley that's non-racer related, it's about some
Yeah,
random person that worked at the park.
William Haynes, great guy, worked the train for years, passed away in 2012. I got to know him before I started working at Kings Island. You know, he knew me as a guest and that I had interest in learning about the trains. And if he was pulling into the station and saw me waiting in line to ride or getting into my seat before the train would depart, you know, he'd come over and say hi and, you know, talk, answer any questions I had about it. So if you saw some of the Kings Island blogs that I had written over the years about the train, some of that information that I got came from him. You know, again, just a great guy, and that's who the the roundhouse is named after. You know, in honor of him.
Did he work at the park when he passed away, or had he just recently left? Because I remember there was like a big deal about it through the park, but I don't remember if it's because he was employed there when he passed.
I don't remember him being there at that time. I thought he had maybe just retired, but I may be wrong on that. But you know, I'd seen him when I first started working there. But you know, just again, a great guy. Loved the train. Loved Kings Island. Loved interacting with guests. You know, and you know, those that worked with him, you know, they had, you know, nothing but, you know, great things to say about him. But I don't think, you know, as much as I love the train, I don't think there's anyone that loved the KI and Miami Valley Railroad more than he did.
Absolutely. All right. Hey, before we get to the second listener question, Don, it's been bothering me. What's that shirt hanging behind you?
The shirt behind me is a Tower Topics t-shirt. They're available to purchase. $22, includes shipping. And if you're interested in one, just send us a direct message. You can message us on our X, which is Tower_Topics, and let us know you're interested, and we'll get you all the details to make payment. They get shipped out within a matter of days. We've seen several of these now, you know, around the park at Kings Island. I really like the color of the shirt. I think it kind of goes with a lot of the different, you know, whether shorts or jeans or whatever you might be wearing. But yeah, I mean, guests have come up to me, you know, wearing the shirt, you know, tell me how much they like it. So if you want one, the opportunity is there to get one and show your support for the show.
Yep, just send us a message. Don, what's the second listener question?
Second listener question is from Xander. And he asked, he'd love to know more about the history of the Beach Waterpark and its relationship or competition with Kings Island through the years.
This is a Kings Island podcast. Why is he asking about a different place?
Well, I think he's asking about the competition, you know, what it was like, you know,
yeah. I mean,
yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, just the brief rundown. It was owned by the Hinkle Schuler Company, which you probably see their signs because they're in the real estate business. There were some unwise things that were done. Company went bankrupt, closed for about a year. It was bought by Adventure Holdings out of Jacksonville, Florida. And it was originally going to be renamed Adventure Landing, like all their other parks are, but then they changed it to the Beach at Adventure Landing, and then they're like, that doesn't roll off the tongue. And then it became the Beach Waterpark, and then very small, an Adventure Landing property or something like that. But the competition was probably not friendly. It's two water parks within eye shot of each other. They both serve different markets. You know, Kings Island, we've talked in mass who they market to. It's the season pass base for good or for bad. And then the Beach tried to do, I think they were big on their like company picnics and stuff like that during their first run. And then the second run, it was more like the Mason locals pool kind of thing, which is a model that can work because, you know, Sunlight Pool essentially did that too. But yeah, they closed in 2019 for the season, fully intending to open for 2020. They did not open for 2020 because of the pandemic. 2021 rolls around, and then it's like, well, we would have to pay lifeguards $25 an hour or whatever because labor is ridiculous. So let's hold off. And then it just keeps on getting pushed off. Now, my understanding, and I'm not going to talk out of turn, is that this isn't the end of the story for the beach. There are people that still have ideas and partnerships and whatever. But just side note, don't try to break in there. They have employees. They arrest everybody who does. It's not abandoned. There's literally people still cutting the grass and stuff in there. But Don, you were at the park. Let's talk about when the beach closed the first time and Kings Island like honored their season passes. Like, do you remember anything about that?
Yeah, that was something that Kings Island did because it was the right thing to do. There had been a number of individuals that had renewed or bought season passes for the beach, and then the announcement kind of came up, unexpected for them.
Yeah.
So they were able to roll that season pass into a Kings Island season pass, and a number of them did, and I think some of them are probably still, Kings Island season pass holders today. It was a nice, thing for the park to do, to make that offer. Some didn't like it because they thought it was kind of, trying to say, okay, your park didn't work out, come to us now, type of a thing. So there were some that resented that offer, as you're going to have in any situation like that. But let's go back to when the beach first opened in 1985. Kings Island did not have a water park yet. Now, there was discussions about doing that, but it wasn't to that phase yet where they were going to build the water park. And I think had there not been the beach, it would have been a separate gate like you see at Cedar Point, and you see it not. So I think that the beach being there made it a situation where Kings Island included it with park admission. And I don't think that would have been the case had the beach never come along. So, I think Kings Island guests, they owe it to the beach, for that two parks, one price situation that you have at Kings Island.
Yeah, and to clarify, so the beach opened in 85, and when did Waterworks open? Like 89-ish? Was it
89 Waterworks open, yes.
Yeah, so my understanding, I don't know the Hinkle-Schuler people. I don't know anybody that was involved at the time, but my understanding is that they weren't stupid. They realized that Kings Island was eventually going to build a water park, and it was probably going to be sooner than later. So it was built into their business plan anyway. So I know that there's a lot of like, revisionist history that talks about like, they built the beach thinking that they could one up Kings Island, and then Kings Island sure showed them, but they knew it. Adding a water park to physical parks was a huge trend at the time.
Yeah, and you had Surf Cincinnati too. That was, along Interstate 275. I think it was near Mount Healthy. Back then too, that was doing okay. Before the beach opened, so it was an opportunity. You look, Mason was a growing community at that time. Looked like a good location to do it. I don't know that they knew Kings Island was going to open a water park, at that time, but it looked like a good idea, to go in there because of, where it was going to be located. And the thought was you might get some people who, you had the campground. Remember, you had the campground there. So those that would stay for a week, they might go to Kings Island for a couple of days, spend a day at the water park. So the site, the location, made all the sense in the world when they opened it in 1985.
Oh, yeah. No, and I'm not saying that they had any insight as to Kings Island opening a water park. I'm just saying that my understanding is that they built the water park, they built the beach under the assumption that Kings Island would probably add a water park sometime sooner than later.
Yeah, I think they, figured down the line.
Right,
exactly. Yeah, no, that it would happen somewhere down the line. I don't know that they thought that they would include it with park admission, though.
I think that was because you got to think the beach would probably still thrive today if they didn't. Well, I mean, I guess to be clear, saying survive today is a little stretch because it's really easy to get into Cedar Point Shores. You used to have to buy a separate ticket, and then I don't know how it was back before the acquisition, before we had platinum passes and stuff. But it was I think they had a separate pass for like $100, right?
Yeah, they did. Yeah, there was just a pass for that, exactly.
Yeah, so if Kings Island did that, now let's be honest. By now, the water park would be included in the gold pass, just not in the silver. Well, yeah, maybe the silver pass nowadays too, really, because the silver pass is pretty pumped up nowadays. But I think that the end result would have, in the last 10 or 15 years, it would have been included in your pass, or it would have been like a $30 upgrade or something. But it's like I said, hopefully the beach sees new life. The like I said, I don't want to talk out of turn, because I don't want to say things that don't come true and get people excited or whatever. But um, everyone's hoping that the end isn't here. It's quite possible that it is. It's probably more likely than not that it is, but not all hope is extinguished when it comes to the beach. So
No,
I
hope
don't
is
want
not
to
a.
root for Kings Island's competition, but more of anything is a good thing in a lot of cases. So that's really cool. So who is it that asked that? Was that Xander, the guy that doesn't think I'm a real person? Yeah. Thanks for the question, Xander. Hey, I'm Ryan Sir, along with Don Helvig, and this is Tower Topics.